In the small manufacturing town of Riverbend, Ohio, the idea of talent carried the weight of destiny. People believed some were born ahead of the curve, placed on a higher step before effort ever entered the equation. It was a comforting belief for those who had witnessed brilliance up close, and an unsettling one for those who labored in its shadow. Riverbend was built on routine. Shift whistles defined the hours, and the river defined the pace of thought. Children grew up measuring time by school years and football seasons, and adults measured it by promotions that rarely came. Within this rhythm, two boys grew up under the same gray sky, but under very different expectations. Evan Calder was noticed early. His hands moved with instinctive confidence, whether holding a pencil, a baseball, or a circuit board scavenged from his father's garage. Teachers saw it first, then coaches, then the town itself. His grades required little visible effort, and his projects carried a polish that suggested an internal compass, always pointing toward the right answer. He became Riverbend's proof that talent could appear anywhere, even in a town that rarely produced headlines. Miles Harper was not invisible, but he was never mistaken for exceptional. His work showed progress rather than brilliance, and his achievements arrived through repetition rather than revelation. Teachers described him as dependable, earnest, and slow to warm. None of these were insults, yet none of them carried the electric promise that followed Evan's name. Miles learned early that attention flowed toward ease, and that effort often went unnoticed. Their families lived only 4 blocks apart, but the distance between their circumstances felt wider. Evan's parents worked stable jobs, spoke often about opportunity, and assumed success was a matter of finding the right door to open. Miles's mother worked double shifts at a nursing home, and his father's back injury had quietly restructured the family's future. Stability was not assumed in the Harper household. It was assembled piece by piece. School reinforced the contrast. Evan finished assignments quickly and spent the extra time exploring tangents that fascinated him. Miles stayed after class to ask for clarification, copying notes again at home until understanding replaced confusion. One boy absorbed information like oxygen. The other treated knowledge as weight training, repeating motions until strength developed. No one told Miles that effort would one day outweigh talent. No one promised him a delayed reward. He worked because work was familiar, and because quitting felt heavier than continuing. By high school, Evan's reputation had crystallized. He was the student who could skip steps and still arrive at the answer. His test scores hovered at the top without dramatic swings. Teachers used his work as examples, careful not to sound too impressed, yet unable to hide their relief at having a model student. Miles occupied the middle rows. His grades improved gradually, not through insight, but through discipline. He tracked mistakes in a notebook and rewrote entire chapters in his own words. The process was time-consuming and lonely, but it created a structure he could trust. When success appeared, it felt earned in a way that did not invite applause. The difference between them became most visible during the regional science competition. The event was meant to reward innovation, but it also rewarded presentation, confidence, and speed. Evan's project emerged from a sudden idea sparked by an online lecture he had watched out of curiosity. The execution was elegant, the explanation smooth, and the judges responded with immediate enthusiasm. Miles had chosen a safer topic, one he understood deeply because he had rebuilt it from the ground up. His display was neat but unremarkable, and his conclusions reflected patience rather than creativity. When the results were announced, Evan placed first. Miles did not place at all. The applause confirmed what the town already believed: talent had spoken. Miles accepted the result without visible reaction, but the experience reshaped his internal map. He recognized something important in the silence that followed disappointment. Effort alone did not guarantee recognition. Hard work could build ability, but it did not command attention. That realization did not weaken him, it narrowed his focus. If effort was not enough, then consistency would have to become its own advantage. Graduation arrived with familiar ceremonies and predictable outcomes. Evan received scholarships that framed his future as an open field. Miles received acceptance letters from state schools with financial aid packages that required careful planning. Both left Riverbend carrying different versions of hope. College introduced a new scale. Talent, once rare in a small town, became common in lecture halls filled with high-achieving students. Evan noticed this immediately. His instincts still served him well, but they no longer guaranteed distinction. For the first time, he encountered peers who matched his speed and sometimes exceeded it. Miles noticed something else. The habits he had built for survival in mediocrity translated into endurance. He scheduled his days with precision, treated studying like a job, and measured progress in hours rather than inspiration. While others adjusted to freedom, Miles adjusted to volume. Evan entered the engineering program with confidence rooted in past success. He assumed effort would naturally rise when necessary. Miles entered the same program with caution, aware that ability alone had never carried him. The first semester sorted students quickly. Advanced courses demanded sustained attention, not just insight. Evan performed well, but cracks appeared in moments requiring persistence over weeks rather than flashes of understanding. Procrastination, once harmless, now carried consequences. Miles struggled too, but struggle was familiar territory. He approached each setback as data rather than judgment. He attended every review session, rewrote problem sets, and treated failure as instruction. His progress was incremental, but it was reliable. By the end of the year, Evan's grades were strong but no longer exceptional. Miles's grades were modest but climbing. Neither noticed each other much, yet their trajectories were beginning to bend in opposite directions. Summer internships highlighted the difference. Evan secured a placement through a recommendation that cited his natural aptitude. The work was stimulating but loosely structured, allowing freedom without accountability. Miles found a position that demanded repetitive tasks and strict oversight. The environment was demanding, but it rewarded consistency. Evan enjoyed the prestige but struggled with ambiguity. Without clear benchmarks, his motivation drifted. Miles thrived under expectations that matched his discipline. He learned systems, documented processes, and earned trust through reliability. By the time they returned to campus, the gap between gift and grit had begun to narrow in ways that were not immediately visible. Evan still appeared gifted, still moved with ease, still spoke with confidence. Miles still worked quietly, still avoided attention, still measured success privately. Yet beneath the surface, one relied on momentum, while the other built infrastructure. The distance between gift and grit was shrinking, not because talent faded, but because effort accumulated. And accumulation, unlike brilliance, rarely announced itself.